surrounding states aren't signatories to the ICC. In order for the ICJ to make a ruling on something, you've got to submit yourself to the authority of the ICJ and say they even can. So I mean, like, to say that like international law is clear here, like people have opinions, sure, but like all of this is incredibly murky. Like there are some readings of international law that would say technically the only people that own any land here is an emerging state from a conflict in which Israel was the only emerging state post 48. So there's an argument to be made that like Israel owns all the land technically. So I mean, like to say international law is clear here is
anybody can say whatever they want. That is true. However, the consensus is the International Court of Justice, the UN Security Council, the UN General Assembly, and every major human rights organization in the world. If you want to take all of those and say their opinion matters as much as bumfuck whatever somebody sitting in their basement and spouting about what legality means, you can do that. But I think we are pretty damn clear about the fact that international law, UN Resolution 242 that came immediately after Israel took over the West Bank, said the acquisition of territory by war is illegal under international law. That's what the resolution said, and said based on that, Israel is obligated to withdraw from the occupied territories. Israel did not want to withdraw from the occupied territories. There was a thing there about how first you need reciprocation of Palestinians recognizing Israel. That came at the beginning of the so-called peace process. So the Palestinians fulfilled the first half of that, if you want to insist on that being a condition, and Israel responded by expanding its occupation. And so the International Court of Justice in 2004 weighed in on Israel building a wall throughout the West Bank. And they said, frankly, their explanation for building that wall, they're building it within occupied territories. They're building it to protect illegal settlements that are built on top of Palestinian land. All of that is illegal. And so that wall is also illegal. So this is really straightforward. And I think that we do the audience a disservice by pretending that there's a lot of kind of murky, this talk of disputed territories in the Palestinian territories, I think is extremely unhelpful, because the dispute is between Israel on the one hand and the rest of the world on the other. There's been a short exception to that, which is when Trump came into office, he joined Israel into declaring that the occupation and the settlements are not illegal. But again, I would not want to be on the side of Trump and Netanyahu. I would rather be on the side of the entire international human rights consensus and international law consensus on this, which is that Israel's occupation and settlements and wall in the West Bank are absolutely and categorically illegal. I would like to touch on a couple of...
I mean, like, again, like the legality question here, first of all, when we're citing like human rights organizations or UN General Assembly, like all the UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. When you look at like a resolution like 242, it doesn't even really make sense. And I like the advisory opinions or opinions given by like UN General Assembly bodies just doesn't really mean much. And again, like the legality, like the opinions of the ICJ that's being asked to give an opinion on something where neither territory is actually submitting themselves to the jurisdiction or rulings of the ICJ, turns out insofar as international law goes, it's kind of pointless. I mean, they're nice arguments and we can use them, I guess, if we feel like they're bolstering something, but they don't really address any of the issues on the ground and they don't really get us any closer to an actual peace process. I think even you would agree that screaming at Israel over and over again, hey, there are some people that think that what you're doing is illegal, doesn't really get us anywhere. It's not.
No. I think when one country steals land from another people against international law and is ethnically cleansing them in slow motion, pushing them out of their homes, driving them out of their homes to the condemnation of every human rights organization in the world, I think screaming at them about that is the right thing to do. And
sure,
it comes down to the governments that are supplying and enabling that. The United States government should not be sending weapons to a country that is engaging in human rights violations and land theft on this scale. That's the fundamental reality. Look,
when we say, okay, so like let's we can go into this as deep as you'd want to. I'd love to. When we say steals land from another people, when we say Israel steals land from another people, what does that mean?
It means Palestinians have Israeli soldiers. I can send you videos if you have not seen them.
Okay.
Who knock on their doors in a place like occupied East Jerusalem, which again, under international law, which you don't seem to care so much about. I mean, by the way, if you want to go down that line of dismissing international law, then by all means, Russia invading Ukraine is just fine. And if China wants to take over part of the United States, that's also okay. Who's to say it's all disputed? I don't think that's a useful frame of reference.
Well, I don't think China invading countries or Russia invading countries is a lot different, because you have internationally recognized sovereign states with borders that even those countries had recognized that are being invaded. That's a lot different than whatever the situation is right now in Israel and Palestine. When we say Israel stealing land from people, who did Israel steal land from? When you pointed back to Resolution 242, what is that referring to? Who did they steal land from?
Resolution 242 says that Israel taking over the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem violates international law because those are not part of Israel. At the time, the West Bank was under Jordanian control and Gaza was under Egyptian control.
Wait, no, wait. They were part of those countries, right?
No,
They
no,
weren't.
no.
They didn't belong to Palestine. Of course, Jordan literally made. Why do you think Jordan today is 2/3 Palestinians? They literally gave citizenship and made citizens every single person living in the West Bank.
No, no, no. You're confused. Jordan was not part of Jordan officially. Jordan
West
right
Bank?
now, by the way. Well, Jordan is not. Yeah, the West Bank is not part of Jordan. So when Israel was founded in 1948, they took over 78% of historic Palestine. The parts they did not take over were the West Bank and Gaza, and that's when those areas fell under Jordanian control and Egyptian control.
Correct. Jordan annexed the West Bank. 1950. They literally annexed it. They gave citizenship. Yes, literally. They literally did. It was yes. That's why it was called. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. The impression that I'm under right now is that you want to debate semantics about all of this and refusing, again, insisting on getting into a level of weeds here that is designed specifically to miss the overarching picture.
Okay.
The overarching picture, again, for simplicity's sake, the entire world agrees that the West Bank is not part of Israel and Israel is obligated to withdraw from it. Israel entered a peace process in 1993 that is premised on withdrawing from the occupied territories.
No, they're not.
They did the opposite.
Wasn't. The Oslo Accords were not premised on that. They were the Oslo Accords. No, they weren't.
They were premised on the idea of creating a Palestinian state within 5 years in the occupied territory.
There were no concrete resolutions set on the Oslo Accords. That's why in 5 years they needed to revisit to do an actual peace process. The Oslo Accords did not make any actual commitments. Also, it's very annoying that people accuse me of not knowing anything about this topic, but then I understand when you're debating things like this, you don't know anything about the topic, and that's why you get upset when you talk about like getting in the weeds. Even that quote that you gave earlier from the Israeli foreign minister about how like I wouldn't have accepted the deal if I was a Palestinian at the time. That's not what he said. That's not what that quote says. And if you actually go to the book and you actually read the passage where he talks about it, what he said was that conditions were not right at the time for Palestinians to feel like they could accept that deal. But he was talking about the conditions that existed throughout the country, not that it was a bad deal. Universally, every other person in the Arab world, the Egyptian leadership, Saudi foreign ambassador said that these deals were amazing, that what was coming after Camp David, what was being negotiated at the Tabla Summit, these were unbelievable deals, that Arafat went into these things expecting 91% of the land, and by the end, with land swaps, he was getting 95 to 97% of the original land that the Palestinians had. The idea that these were horrible deals that were being put before them is not true. And the idea that the Oslo Accords were some permanently negotiated peace status is also not true. That's why there was going to be another meeting in 5 years, ideally, to figure out what the permanent arrangements would be. I don't agree that any of this is getting lost in the weeds. I think it's really important to know the specifics.
No, I'm catching on to your style about this. I think you're less interested in the actual topic and more interested in winning an arguments based on kind of like silly and manufactured points. It's quite transparently what is happening here.
Wait, what is, don't you think it's important to understand like what Jordan's goal was when they invaded the West Bank, or what Egypt was doing when they invaded the Gaza Strip, rather than just screaming apartheid over and over again?
I think it's important to engage in good faith and to know what you're talking about and to not say things that you don't understand. I've watched that debate with Israel's foreign minister on more than one occasion. What he was saying is that the deal that was offered to Palestinians at the end of Camp David was a bad deal, and if he were Palestinian, he would not have accepted it. And
that's literally not what he said. If you watch the debate, and I watched that debate, it was literally hosted on Democracy Now!, and he's quoting his own book. And if you go back and read the book instead of just watching a YouTube video, you'll see the context of what was given. And what was given was that
we'll make that available. I'm glad you're saying that. I think we're going to be able to clip this up. I'm going to clip up that part of the debate. We'll put it up there with the quotes of the book, which I have sitting on my shelf. I'm happy to do all of this.
Okay. I hope they're your quotes and not quotes from a Finkelstein book about what the interview was.
No, don't worry. It'll be a clip of Shlomo Ben Ami speaking in his own words. I'm happy to put that together.